I said, God's been telling me since November, like I keep hearing this voice, and I keep typing it in my stack every morning. It's like, water what is right in front of you. Welcome back, Life in Abundance. This is Mark and Bree, and we are coming at you a little different today. We started couples therapy 2 weeks ago, and it's been pretty life-changing in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, super powerful.
And so what we're wanting to do is, with the podcast, is come right from therapy and go into podcasts and just talk about what we've...
Yeah, drop the bombs.
Yeah, drop the bombs. And last week we did our first session, and our therapist is a big Enneagram guy, which is a 144 question test you take. It's multiple choice, and it gives you a number from 1 to 9. And I am a number 6, and Bree is a number 8.
What is a 6?
6 is a loyalist, what they call them, and an 8 is a challenger. And so the certain numbers mean that you typically act from either your head, your heart, or your gut. And I am a head guy at a 6, and Bree, being an 8, is a gut person. So I am a person that thinks a lot of things through, that maybe overcomplicates, overthinks some things, and Bree is like, I'm going to the top of the hill. I don't know how I'm going to get there, but we'll figure it out along the way, and hopefully it works out. Kind of like shoot now and ask questions later.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, man. And we kind of knew this about each other, and then seeing it and having Steven, our guy, break it down and show us some of our habits, some of our things we do. It's funny because you're married to your spouse and you know the way they are, but you don't really know like why they do those things, like why they act like that, why they feel like that, why they can't get out of the rut, why they're so good at getting out of the rut, whatever it is. And he just breaks it down, and you're like, oh my gosh, like that makes so much sense. And so, yeah, we've had 2 weeks of it, and today was extremely good. And I'll let Bree kind of tell you about that today.
Yeah, so basically in learning what the 6 is and what the 8 is, Steven, our therapist, he framed us so well, like to the T. It was almost scary. And just even in things that I said, he said, now, Mark, let me guess how you're reacting right now to that. And it was like, whoa, he can read our mind. But no, in all honesty, he just knows this is what he studies. It's incredible, actually. So as the 8, the challenger, a lot of times I look at Mark in the things that he worries about and cares about, and to me, they're completely irrelevant. I'm like, why would you even think of that? Like, I would never think of that. And it was put to me so clearly today that Mark is a protector. He's kind of the man at the top of the ship looking for danger, where danger could be, avoid those areas. He's already thinking of a problem before it's a problem. And that's just not how my brain works. And today we were watching a short clip on this, and a guy was saying how, he walks past a dog and naturally his mind goes to like, I should walk around this way because if the dog was going to bite me, he's going to bite me here. I have my phone in my pocket. Could I call 911 right away? Like, they just dissect a problem before it even happens, or an issue before it even happens. And my brain just doesn't think like that. I'm aware. I have this sense of awareness where Mark's mind, I think, goes to problem solving and survival mode, just like that, in an instinct. And part of that comes from the loyal, like, protector, if you will, that's in his nature. And it's not something you can help. It's just something that you are. So one thing that I thought was so interesting is he said about the 8 and the 6, like a magnet. You have this magnetic draw to one another when you are truly working on yourself. But at the same time, 8 and 6 are known to have the opposite effect of like a withdrawal, if you will, when you are not, like the back of a magnet. So for me, I thought that was super interesting, is that when we are at our best, we are our best. And when we are not, we definitely are not.
It's called buy a house and remodel it.
So there's that. That did happen.
Yeah. It was,
with a 10-day-old. Yeah, that definitely created a disconnect in the magnet for
But
sure.
no, that is like doing this house thing. Like I look at it where a problem happens, then I see everything that go along with that problem.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, we need to put new plumbing in. Oh my gosh, we got to dig up concrete. That costs this much money. We got to do, like all these things. And Bree's like, okay, that's fine. Let's fix that and let's move on to that. And I'm like, well, yeah, but there's all these things that we have to do. And then I get overwhelmed by them.
Well, you look at the hypotheticals. We're not even sure that those things have to happen. It's like Mark hears, okay, $20,000. It might as well be $100,000 by the time he dissects all the things that could happen once you open up that can of worms. And I think that's great mind for when you are doing a remodel, when you are doing a business, but to live everyday life like that, it puts you in a state of like paralyzed, like you won't do anything, right? Because you're just so concerned of the what ifs, where I don't really think much about the what ifs because I look at what I know I'm capable of. And if there is a what if, I'll figure out what if and move on. So, yeah, it's interesting to see how this plays out in our marriage. And we had a really deep conversation on Tuesday night, and that is one of my impossible goals, is to have a deep conversation with Mark 3 times a week. I know that sounds crazy because people are like, don't you guys talk every day? We do, but we don't sit like knee to knee, look at each other, hear each other, feel each other, have no other distractions. And it's important to me that we have that time. We call it couch time in our house, but it is important, deep conversation, and it could be about nothing. But just the fact that I have his attention, I know he's hearing me, I know he's feeling me, and that is reciprocated. That is so important and so powerful in marriage, because so many years I walked around my house not feeling like I even had a husband. I had a roommate. And I know so many people who live like that. And for me, it just was not working anymore. For Mark, it ultimately wasn't working either, but it had to come from me to say, hey, we're not doing this anymore for us to actually change it. We could have gone on like that for years, I think, if it were up to you, because from the outside, everything looked fine. But internally, nothing felt fine. We were not fine. So where I was going with that, though, is me as an 8 and my like dominance, if you will, or my challenger sense. I tend to become a person who responds by becoming like a stone wall when I hear something I don't like, when Mark and I get in a fight, when we have a disagreement. In complete honesty and transparency, a lot of times I can hear what he has to say, and then I just build this guard, this stone wall. I shut down, I pull away, withdraw, whatever you want to call it, and I physically, like, I become so like numb. And Mark has a tendency then to tear down the wall with criticism. And then when you naturally have that, you think the more I criticize, the faster I can crumble this wall. When in all reality, that's not the case at all. Is I'm feeling this trigger of attack, or I'm not feeling safe, or whatever it might be. And to show me love in those moments will allow the wall to come down and me to be much more receptive rather than withdraw, push away, and even hear you. So it was funny because Mark's way of talking when you don't like something is to criticize, and his tone is everything to me. First of all, I never like someone to tell me what I am or what I'm not. And a lot of times Mark will say to me, do you just not care about these things? And I, for the longest time, was like, don't tell me what I care about and what I don't care about. You don't have the right to do that. And I couldn't articulate the words of why that triggered me so bad. And Stephen just made it so clear, is like, Bree, you stop listening and hearing him and responding like receptively when he talks at that tone. So instead of yelling, don't tell me what I feel or don't feel, because that's not productive, tell him, Mark, I cannot hear you in that tone. And give him a minute to step back, own it, and say, okay, let's try this again. And it's funny because for 17 years, I feel like we have learned all avenues of communication, what works and what doesn't work. And we've made ground rules for fighting. And I felt like that was super productive in the 17 years we were married. And now look at all the shit that we've worked through over time. And just in 2 sessions with our therapist, learning we have still so much to learn and grow, and how we can do it so much better. And so Tuesday night, we had a really deep conversation of like connection. And I just basically just spewed truth to Mark, my truth of what I felt, what I saw, and a lot of it about him. And he was so receptive in a way that he's never been in the 17 years of our marriage. And the truth is, for the longest time, I would withhold all those feelings because I knew the repercussion of them would be anger, disconnection, awkwardness in our home, not talking for a couple days. So I learned to train myself to not even go there because I didn't want to deal with the next few days of backlash at me for the way that I even exposed something that he didn't like. So I learned to withdraw my feelings. And then what did that do but ultimately lead us to a place of disconnect? So I could say my approach on Tuesday was much more direct, would you say, and not sparing your feelings, but just speaking my truth. And how'd you handle that differently from how you have in the last 17 years?
I was able to hear my wife for the first time. Not the first time, but I was actually able to hear it and absorb it. Whereas before, I would have got mad, I would have yelled, I would have just shut down. We wouldn't have probably talked for a couple days, a week. And I was able to hear her, and I was able to not let my emotions get the better of me and just be like, yeah, you're right. And I can hear that, and I get it. Because for so long, I was so defensive. I was not doing what I was supposed to be doing, so I couldn't hear my wife. I was like in a fog. And so Tuesday night, it was kind of interesting because we left it. It wasn't like I was like, oh, okay, like that was a great conversation, and she's not very pumped with me, but I get it. And then next morning, I wake up and take my daughter on a field trip, and my wife sends me her stack, and it was kind of like another gut punch, but it was one of those ones where, okay, cool, like I deserve all this. Like I've shown up a certain way for a long period of time, and this is the consequences of me changing and being better. Is I have to deal with what I did, and so I got to think about it all day, and then I got home, and my wife and I we were able to communicate and talk and connect yesterday, which we would have never been able to do in the years prior. There's like no chance that we would have had that conversation and been able to sit on the couch, watch TV, snuggle, do those things, and talk, and actually miss each other from the day. Like there's no chance we could have done that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think too, the way the conversation went, the topic was, Mark feeling a certain way, being a 6 and recognizing the personality traits, and then almost being upset with himself that he is a certain way. It's like, well, that's just who you are. You can't help that.
Well, it's kind of crazy. We can say what we talked about because it's going to tie into the whole day 2 of therapy today. Is that so? I'm sitting there Tuesday night, and my coaching program is going good, but it's not great. It's not where I want it to be, and I feel like I'm not getting the leads that I want. And my wife goes, well, that's because you don't really care about people. And I was like, well, that kind of hurts. And I was like, well, no, I do. And she's like, well, no, you care if something's in it for you. She's like, you don't truly care. She's like, maybe something, because she goes, I even think about like that with me, like our girls. And I was like, well, that kind of hurt. But at the same time, it's kind of true. Like you do certain things that making sure they have food and they have time with me and date nights. But it's like, do I really pour into them by caring? I was like, And then I went on a field trip with my oldest that day, and she's grown up so quick, and I got to sit in the car with her for about 6 hours. And the first 30, 45 minutes we're driving, she's just talking. She shows me her phone, and she had a picture of at school the day before of she was using a fire hose with a fireman. I was like, well, she didn't show me this last night. This is kind of weird. And I go, what's up with that? And she goes, oh, they're at the school, and they let us use the hose, and it was so windy, and the water kept blowing in her face. She had a whole story. She was excited to tell me. And I'm thinking to myself, this is the conversation last night. Mark, when you take quality time to pour into someone and you actually communicate and look at them and want to know about them, they're more prone to open up. And I'm like, man, I gotta do that with my own daughter. I do it sometimes, but not all the time. And that was like a big kind of like aha was yesterday, and then therapy today. It would kind of put it all together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, Mark, you would say Tuesday night you were being really hard on yourself. Like, I'm just an asshole. Why are you even here? And I had to own this today in therapy. I said there was a point in time, like, I had to recognize being married to you, like, sets my soul on fire. There's nobody else I would rather be married to. Nobody else, I am convinced, on earth that can make me feel that way. And the trade-off for suppressing my feelings and not communicating is living a lot of years disconnected and not feeling that fire and that burn. And honestly, that led me to a place that was very lonely. And the emptiness that I felt in that place, we talked about this on our last episode. I was looking at photos of myself and looking at myself in the eyes from 2020, and the girl in that picture was not me. She was so empty. And I didn't even realize the process of how I got there. It seemed like it happened overnight. But once I came to the realization of what I was missing, it was like, I'm not going to live another day in that empty and lonely space. And when we had this conversation yesterday or Tuesday night, it was like, we both are so committed to continue to rebuild this, restore our marriage. We're okay to have these honest and vulnerable conversations no matter how they end, because we know on the other side of that, when you don't, it leads you to this place of loneliness and emptiness. And so as we reveal some of these hard truths, expose things that are hard to hear, I told Mark, I said, I just feel like you're a very selfish person. The truth is, he's not a selfish person at all. He's a very selfless person in the way that he shows acts of service for me and his daughters and our family. And how I feel him and hear him and receive him is very different now, knowing his personality traits can be used in power and not be a weakness. And for the longest time, I treated them like a negative thing because I didn't know how to process them myself as an 8. So as we were talking to our marriage counselor, he said, there's 4 things in marriage that people have a tendency to do, and that lead them to a path of divorce. And it's content, which is an eye roll, like almost answering with disgrace, like just like you don't have time or you're superior to them or whatever it may be. It's just a tone and it's not appropriate. The second being criticism. And criticism I cannot hear. Criticism is the first way for me to shut you out. And that's really hard for me to own because that is Mark's approach when he's angry, and that makes sense. Or fear or anxiety. When he's triggered by something, the first response from him is criticism. The other being a stonewaller, just building up this wall that I am like, it is indestructible. And then Mark tries even harder to break down the wall with criticism. And then the other one being defensiveness. And defensiveness is like deflecting from the topic, right? Like Stephen, our therapist, used this example. He said, I opened the fridge. I was so excited to make a sandwich. And I just said to my wife, do we not have any mayonnaise? And she responded, I haven't had time to go to the store all week. And I know I've totally done that because I get defensive. I've been working all day. Mark, I worked from 8:30 to 6. That's the bank hours. I didn't have time to call the bank today. I'm so sorry. It's like he didn't ask me if I had time. He just asked me, did you call the bank today? It's a yes or no answer. But I immediately respond out of emotion, trying to justify why I didn't by deflecting from the true answer was a no. So it's interesting how we respond in conflict because fear, anxiety, stress, whatever is triggered. And Mark's responses to me being criticism allows me to put up this stone wall and results in 3 or 4 days of awkwardness and not talking and disconnect in a place that I don't want to live. So instead, we're just like shattering all of these old habits and exposing it all. That's hard. It's hard to train yourself to live differently, to operate differently. I told Mark on Tuesday night, I said, you're taking 39 and a half years of operating a certain way and watching it crumble before your eyes, like in just a few months. In just a matter of a few months has Mark been working truly on himself to do this. And you have to completely like rewire yourself. And I really believe that's where true transformation lies for us, because as Stephen, our therapist, shared with us, the opposite of love is not hate. If you're a Christ follower and you believe in the Bible, biblically, it speaks of perfect love is the opposite of fear. And usually Mark's protective, defensive mind and spirit stems from a place triggered by fear. So what that requires of me to counter is to extend perfect love and not stonewall and not distance, not disconnect. And that's hard to do when you just don't feel like it. And I had to own that this morning. I had to own that I have done that for 17 years in marriage. We've been married 17 years. 17 years in marriage, I have stonewalled this man. No wonder why. He's got nothing to do but criticize in the midst of a fight. So we're rewiring all of this from our relationship to our own brain and how we operate. And it's not something people do easily. How'd that make you feel?
Man, that was, I don't want to say the answer I've been looking for, but
Tied it all in, huh, baby?
tied it all in, yeah, because when we were in therapy today, I was talking to Bree. He was sitting there, and I was like, I'm just afraid. Like, I know God wants more for me, but I'm just afraid, and I don't know. And our therapist goes, that's like pretty well said. And I'm like, not really, but okay, like in my mind. And he goes, because he said the opposite of love is fear. So the more you love someone, the more you love, the less you'll have fear. And I was like, I just started bawling.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I think it's in the book of Matthew, I think it is. He's like, the birds don't worry about what they're going to eat, and they don't follow the sky. Like, you shouldn't worry either about tomorrow or what it might bring. Just be like in the present. And I start laughing, and I said, God's been telling me since November, like I keep hearing this voice, and I keep typing it in my stack every morning. It's like, water what is right in front of you. Like, love what I put in front of you. That could be the ladies at the grocery store. It could be.
That sounded so wrong.
Well, no, there's two ladies at the grocery store that always check me out, and they always care about my kids, and we talk and have a good time. But it's like love on those people, like the people that are just at the gym, your wife, your kids, your mom, your dad, your in-laws, like just all the people that God puts in front of you. Just water and just love on them. And for a long time, I would do that kind of, but I would always like, they're probably going to let me down or this or that. And it was just like, I would sabotage myself.
I don't even think it was a thought they're going to let me down. It's like, no, that's exposing myself. That's super vulnerable. I don't feel safe there. I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
It wasn't the fear of how would they react. It was the fear of that's super uncomfortable for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. It was definitely the fear of like, what are they going to say? Am I going to sound stupid or whatever it might be? And so when Stephen said that to me, and he said the opposite of love is fear, so just lean into love. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that is like so easy to do and so hard at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But it's one of those things where I know so many people live in fear, anxiety, guilt, and it's like, because we don't truly love ourselves, we don't love what is right in front of us. Like I say, I do acts of service. I make people dinner. I have people over. I love connecting people, but to truly like pour into people that are right in front of you and like listen to them, you don't have to take on what they're going through, but you just like have to be present. Like I was with my daughter, like, and actually listen and love on them. Dude, I get it. And I've been doing it a little bit at a time the last 6 months, and I've discovered less fear and less anxiety. But when he said that, he's just like, for you to fully experience the letting go and the love, he said you'll have to stop thinking from here, from your head, and start thinking from your heart and your gut more. And he goes, for someone like you, that's really, really hard to do because you see all the negative things that could happen. And he goes, to not think about tomorrow, meaning like you see your bank account, oh my gosh, like, I don't think I'm going to make it this month or whatever it might be. It's like, if you can let that go and know what you're doing right now is going to work and you got to put the work in and all that, he goes, you will see the fruit of that. And I was just like, I'm just crying.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, man, I mean, because I know, like I said, a lot of people struggle with it. And for me, I always wondered why. I kind of knew the answer. And like in my head, you have your little Holy Spirit talk to you. But you're like, I don't know about that. But when he said that, it was like, okay.
He even said, Mark, this sounds something more like the Holy Spirit than it does your head logically telling you yes or no, go or stop. This is just like a draw you can't help.
Yeah, because this has been like the 4th or 5th time in the last 6 months where it's just been like, okay, it's been pretty clear. And when are you going to go, Mark? Because I'm not asking for you to do much. And that's what's kind of crazy about God and in marriage is like usually when you need to change something or you need to adjust, it's not much. It's little tweaks that make a big, big difference. But you're just not wanting to let go because your ego, pride, selfishness, fear just will not let you. And I'm realizing that I have a lot of all that. And to break it down at 39 and a half years old, almost 40 in May, and it's like, wow. Like a part of me is like, man, I've been a pretty crappy person for a long time. But a part of me is like, well, it's pretty cool because now I realize going forward, man, my life could be, my marriage could be, my kids and I, my friends, the people I meet could be whole different outlook. And that's pretty cool to see. And so, and to know.
Yeah, it was super powerful. I highly recommend couples therapy to anybody and everybody. I love this kind of stuff. Makes Mark super uncomfortable, but yeah, it was good. And I felt like, too, one thing he told me that I didn't realize is so many times I told Mark I felt like he was selfish. And he says, Bree, did you ever tell Mark what you needed from him? And the answer was no. I never said from Mark, hey, right now what I need from you is this. And so Mark's doing all these things, act of service, thinking that, okay, this is how I'm showing her love, but that wasn't making me feel loved at all. That's not what I needed from him. What I needed from him was to show me that he cared of where I was at. I need to know that you care, that I'm right now struggling. And I've gone through this life shift, traumatic shift, if you will, in the last few months. And I told him on Tuesday night, I said, you have not asked me one time how I am doing through this loss of identity for myself and trying to rebuild and get to know the new me. You've never once asked me how I'm doing. And when he recognized that, that crushed him because it was true. But the truth is also, I never expressed to him that I needed to know that he cared. And so I had to take ownership for that. I wanted him to know. I wanted him to read my mind, but I never shared with him what I needed and wanted and the clear expectation I had. And so if I'm going to communicate, I have to let my guard down and be vulnerable and let him know, hey, I need that from you right now to feel supported and seen and heard and loved. And so, I owned that and it felt really good. And there were a lot of tears shed, and I'm sure there'll be a ton more, but we're just peeling back layers and digging up stuff from years and years of working so hard to pack that underground and just hide that root. And we're ready to go. We're ready to do it. Burning all the ships right now.
I mean, I can know why people don't want to do it because it's you got to do a lot of self-reflection and you got to be able to take that pain or that darkness that you had or have, and you got to be able to dissect it and then build something good off that. And a lot of people, they don't like pain. They run from it. They know it's there. It's like at the gym, right? Like a lot of people want to be better, but they don't want to go through the pain to be better. And it's the same thing in life, the same thing in your marriage, same thing in business, whatever. It's like you have to go through some pain sometime and sit in it and figure out why it's so painful and what adjustments you need to make to not have that pain or to take that pain and make it something good. And that's what I'm realizing more and more each day is that I'm getting better. And it's like, I was telling the therapist, I said, it's like when I used to, play baseball and you change something in your swing, it exposes your weaknesses. And for a while you're exposed, but then you build up your weaknesses and you become better, like all around. I said, that's what I feel like what happened in therapy is like, we were doing pretty good. I was like, okay, like I'm good. And then you expose something which wasn't even really that bad, but you just exposed it. And I was like, and we see it. We're like, oh my gosh. And then okay, cool. Like this is actually, I feel like I'm going backwards now.
Yeah.
And we were able to have the conversation and we talked to him today and it's like, well, no, you're like, this is what you're supposed to do. Like, this is the right track. And so I know why people don't want to do a lot of self-work, a lot of those kind of things, because it's easier to do what you know, what's comfortable, because that doesn't make you emotional. It doesn't bring up bad pain. But the pain is good as long as you're doing something with it and you're moving forward with it.
Yeah, I think that's one thing too that's hard is we make headway in these sessions and then what? He leaves you in your thoughts and having to work on this for a week, and we have a week before we can talk and reconnect, and it's like, I want more. And so we even asked him if we could like increase our session times, and he's like, I really don't think that's necessary. I'm like, wait, but I have more I want to tell you. So anyways, we start to like get eager to share more and dig deeper and expose more. So anyways, it just helps us to have a better understanding too of our clients and what they're going through. It's amazing when you live that life, you know it all too well, but then to share what you have done to basically come out of this pit of nearly divorce, that's where we were. Some things in the process are a blur. Like there was so much pain and trauma there that you try and drown them out. Naturally, it's your natural instinct to try and deflect from that and not remember that or whatever it might be. And for me, I know having a better understanding of how I operate and why I operate that way, and same for Mark, helps me to like guide other people who are going through something similar. So I was on a coaching call this morning talking to a woman about her business. And I said, it is so obvious to me that the issue here is not stemming from a money or a business problem. It's 100% from an identity crisis of not knowing who she is and where she wants to go. There is no clear path that I can make it for anyone who does not have a starting point of A and an ending point of B. And so it felt like she was just throwing darts at a board to see what stuck. It makes sense because she had no idea where she was and who she was. And so that's one thing for Mark and I as we are rebuilding our marriage, to be so confident and certain in who we are. We can build anything on that. Mm-hmm. For the longest time, we did not have that identity and confidence in each other as a married couple, and it makes everything rocky. So now we're in the pursuit for greatness, and showing up to couples therapy and crying every Thursday is now our commitment, and it's been so good. It's been so good.
Yes, I highly recommend it, which I never thought I would say, but get a couples therapist that you like. If you like to know who ours is, you can send us a DM and we'll be happy to share some information.
Yeah.
But that is it for today. Thank you for listening. If you are on YouTube, give us a like and a follow. If you're on Apple or Spotify, same thing. Give us a like and a follow. We greatly appreciate it. Until next time, life in abundance with the Gentrys. God is good.
Bye, guys. Thank you.